by Larry Snelling, Chicago Police Superintendent, Annette Nance Holt, Commissioner of the Chicago Fire Department, Mary Sheridan, First Deputy of the Chicago Fire Department, John Wilkerson, Chief Operating Officer of the City of Chicago, Gary Haywood, Deputy Mayor of Community Safety, Derek Meyer, Deputy Special Agent in charge of the United States Secret Service, Dan Casey, Management Executive Director of Public Safety Technology. And with that, I will pass it over to the Superintendent.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, thank you to Executive Director Toronto, especially for all of the hard work that came from OEMC, which I can't say enough about the work and the communication, especially with the dispatchers. Just what a phenomenal job they did getting the information out to our officers and communicating on the ground. It was extremely important. Last night, I'm sure all of you witnessed, and a lot of you were more than likely out there. I see some familiar faces right now. Right in front of the Israeli consulate, we had a group that showed up, and they showed up with the intent on committing acts of violence, vandalism. That was their intent. As the Chicago Police Department, we did everything that we could to de-escalate that situation. But there's only so much de-escalation that you can attempt before it becomes excessive repetition. And in excessive repetition, you continue to say things to people until they stop believing that you're going to do anything about it. And what I've said from the very beginning is that if you come to our city, whether you live here or you're visiting, and you show up with the intent on having your First Amendment rights exercised, and bring no violence, no vandalism to our city, no hate to our city, we will allow you to do that and protect your rights. And our officers have done a great job in performing their duties in that way. However, last night was a danger to our city and a danger to our citizens in this city, our residents, property, and CPD had to protect that. So CPD stepped up. We declared a mass arrest after our officers were physically confronted and attacked. We were not the initiators of violence, but we responded to it. And our officers responded exactly the way that they were trained to respond. Out of that, we had between 55 and 60 arrests. We will get you an exact number. Some of those things are still being worked out. We had 2 individuals who were transported to the hospital, arrestees, who were treated and released, one for knee pain, one with a finger injury. We also had 2 officers who were injured, who refused medical attention because they didn't want to leave their fellow officers from the scene. They wanted to stay there and continue to work toward keeping this city safe. Couldn't have anything more noble happen. We also saw counter-protests, but in the counter-protests, they were peaceful. They listened to what we said to them. They moved when we asked them to move. It's very important to understand that once we called the mass arrest, that it was at that point we needed to take people into custody for public safety. This is something that we did. We attempted to avoid the clash to no avail, but CPD is not going to run away. We will not stand by and let our officers be attacked, because an officer who cannot protect himself, herself, themselves, cannot protect this city. Enough is enough. And at some point, we've got to recognize and we have to have the proper reporting on what happens. And I've seen that from you, and I've seen that from the journalists, and I'd like to thank you for that, because it's necessary to understand what's really happening out there, what our officers are responding to, and the risks that they're dealing with. I just need to say this for our officers, especially our female officers. The vicious, nasty, sexually explicit things that were said to those women, absolutely disgusting. I have women in my family, and the anger that I felt. But let me tell you, the pride that I have in those women who dealt with that, took it, did not lose their cool. And the officers who didn't lose theirs. Understand, these are human beings. Somebody's mother, someone's daughter, sister, aunt, niece, being spoken to in that way. But they stood their ground and they did what they had to do. They didn't overreact. Our male officers who were standing there didn't take the bait. They continued to fight through in the way that they were trained to respond. And in an incident like that, where that number of people showed up to fight with the police, and we were able to take nearly 60 people into custody, minimal injuries tells you that what's happening with the Chicago Police Department is transformative. The leadership and the leadership team that you see right here, this is a transformation of what you're seeing. Please report that. There's enough of you out there. We will not allow people to come to this city, disrespect it, and destroy it. We expect the rest of the week to be better. That's what we're hoping for. We're hoping that people see that the Chicago Police Department is prepared, ready, willing, and able to defend this city. It's time to get a handle on anyone who wants to wreak havoc on the city, people who are committing violent acts throughout the city. It is time to bring Chicago back to where we know it can be. But that's going to take all of us. So it wasn't just the Chicago Police Department last night. As you see, we have the fire department here with us, our federal partners. We have the COO, John Robinson. We have Deputy Mayor Gatewood standing here with us. There are so many people behind the scenes from other agencies who are working to make sure that this city is safe and to make sure that we're successful throughout this DNC. I cannot say enough about my leadership team, boots on the ground, making sure that this operation works the way it needs to work. The overall incident commander, Chief of Counterterrorism, Dwayne DeVries, the Chief of Patrol, John Hine, the Chief of Detectives, Antonetta City, our Chief of the Bureau of Internal Affairs, Yolanda Talbot, and the Chief of Constitutional Policing, Angel Navales. Behind them, I'm sure you all know, Director, Community Policing, Glenn Brooks. This collaboration has been excellent. The leadership of Executive Director Jose Tirado, making sure that the communication is working, is why we're successful. Lastly, I'd like to thank the men and women of the greatest police department in the world, our Chicago police officers, our sergeants, our lieutenants, our captains, commanders, deputy chiefs who are out there making sure that we keep this city safe during this time. I saw something in their eyes last night that I haven't seen in years. A level of pride knowing that they kept this city safe from those who came here to burn things, to burn flags, to fight with the police, to cause destruction, mayhem. Make it great like 68. That was what they brought here to Chicago. It's 2024. And the Chicago Police Department proved that. So let's get off of 1968. Let's stop talking about 1968. This is 2024. The Chicago Police Department is proving that every single day. I could not be more proud of the work that the men and the women of this department are doing right now to keep this city safe. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Mayor Gary Beeman.
Thank you, Superintendent. Good morning. I stand here yet again. As I said yesterday, the city is ready. The city has always been ready. The collaboration that we have across the board has been phenomenal. Last night wasn't a protest. To call last night a protest would be disrespectful to people who have actually processed it through things that have moved societies forward across the country. That wasn't what we had last night. What we had is we had people who came down to the city to cause harm, to wreak havoc, and they were met with the best trained police department in the country. They were met with collaboration across the board with all of our agencies working together around the clock. The leadership like Deputy Mayor Lori Lipson to make sure all of our agencies show up on time every time to make sure this work happens. We work in partnership around the clock. We work to keep this city safe. And again, as I said yesterday, we welcome protests. We welcome peaceful protests. Last night wasn't that. We expect protests. We expect them to be peaceful moving forward. We expect that level of collaboration and partnership. We welcome it. We look forward to it. And with that, I have the pleasure of bringing up Derek Meyer, the Deputy Special Agent in charge of the United States Secret Service.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you to Superintendent Snelling. I could not ask for a better friend, and the city of Chicago could not ask for a better leader. Good morning. I'm Derek Meyer, the Deputy Special Agent in charge of the United States Secret Service's Chicago Field Office. We're starting the third day of the 2024 Democratic National Convention, and I'm proud of the work the U.S. Secret Service, Chicago Police Department, and the rest of our federal, state, and local partners have done securing this historic event. It is a total team effort. There have been several large demonstrations this week. We are very appreciative of the Chicago Police Department for safeguarding the city and the convention. I'm also proud of our Secret Service personnel for their great work during the DNC so far. As we head into the DNC's final 2 days, I'd like to thank everyone heading to the convention for their patience and understanding navigating the large crowds associated with an event of this size. We ask that attendees and delegates arrive early and allow extra time for security. Also, I have a very important message for all drone operators. I would like to remind everyone that the FAA has temporary flight restrictions in place for the DNC through Thursday. That means that this restricted airspace is a no drone zone. The restrictions cover a large area, so drone pilots need to check the FAA's before you fly service ahead of flying. That app can be downloaded from your device's app store. If a drone pilot enters FAA TFRs without permission, their drone can be confiscated. They could also be fined up to $75,000 and could also be criminally prosecuted. Notices and TFRs are updated and changed frequently. There is a complete list of notices and TFRs at www.faa.gov. Thank you.
We'll be open for questions.
Begin questioning here.
Mac Lederman with Block Club Chicago. Were journalists amongst those arrested last night?
Yes, there were 3 journalists who were arrested last night. Look, you know, as I said before, and I said this yesterday at the presser, we have journalists. We won't allow you to do your jobs. We really do. But there are times when we're calling a mass arrest or we're attempting to move in, we need you guys to step to the side. If you don't do that, it's obstructing us, and it makes it harder for us to take the people into custody that we're attempting to take into custody. And what we don't want is for you to get caught in the middle of it and get injured and hurt. So if you're not moving, if you're not complying with our orders at that time, you may be breaking the law yourselves. So we need you to cooperate with us so that we can help you. We help each other in this way. There were multiple times where we attempted to get in, but there were so many journalists around and they were so close that it created a problem for us moving in. The other thing is I need everyone to understand this, because this is something that has been problematic for years when it comes to protesting. We've allowed people to walk right up into an officer's face. It goes against everything an officer is trained to do. There's something called a reactionary gap. Actions are quicker than reactions. When you get that close to an officer, you need to be at least 2 arms length distance away from that officer. Because if you walk up to that officer, you're hostile, you're angry. The next step is violence. And now, if someone decides to act violently toward that officer, and this officer's actionary gap has been shortened, that officer has to recognize the possibility of that attack, and then come up with a plan to defend himself against it. That 2 arms length distance gives the officer the ability to do that. So what we would like is when you're out there, please try to stay at least 2 arms length away from those officers, because it's a safety issue for every officer on the scene.
Morning, Superintendent, Sam from the Tribune.
How are you, Sam?
Well, thank you. How are you? So last night, obviously, there was no permitted march out after the rally outside the Israeli consulate. And after the group began to go south on Clinton and then return back to Canal, it appeared that officers assigned to monitor the group not necessarily corralled them, but sort of surrounded them. And as that happened, the group dissipated with each pause in the march. Was that a planned tactic by responding officers?
It was planned by the leadership. So the leadership makes the decisions based on what we're seeing. And when we're seeing people peel off, they're having these conversations, and that's why I can't say enough about this leadership team. They came up with a plan as it unfolded. And what you have to understand are demonstrated tactics. At some point, sometimes people break off to cause a diversion for officers, all right, to try to split the resources. But that's not something that the leadership fell for. We made decisions on the fly, and as we saw things unfolding and moving, we knew we had to take action. We cannot allow these people to continue to move through our city, unwatched, because they would have committed other acts of vandalism and violence. So yes, these are things that we do as we see them unfold, and it's a part of the trend.
Hi, this is Brooke from PGN. I'm good, how are you? I just have a quick question. We were talking to people last night and they said that, people that were protesting, they said that they felt that the police response was overwhelming. That's their word, not mine. Is there anything that you would have done differently last night, given what you know now? And then could you just clarify the arrest number for us as well? Because we heard another number from a different agency of 72 this morning, and I just want to get a handle on that.
Well, first off, the word overwhelming, if that's the word they use, then we were 100% successful, because that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to overwhelm them. We wanted to overwhelm those people who decided to come to our city and destroy it. Now, overwhelming doesn't mean that we were excessive. The response was proportional. And in some instances, officers use less force. In most instances, officers use less force than they could have used. So when we look at something that could have been so much more chaotic, to lock up that number of people, to have that number of people taken into custody with 2 minor injuries, it tells you that the officers are doing a great job. They remembered that training. They're not overreacting, and they're responding the way that they're supposed to respond. But when there's criminal activity, when we take people into custody, it's never going to look pretty, ever. It's not going to look pretty. They yell and scream, they yell obscenities, and they'll say, we're not doing anything. We're just peacefully protesting. Just because you say that doesn't mean that's what's happening.
Alex Talbot, NBC News. Thus far, your team has managed to control the activity without the use of tear gas or rubber bullets. Are you reserving that tactic as an option, and what line needs to be crossed?
Well, here, we can't say what line needs to be crossed. That's a game time decision. It's what we're seeing. And if we know that it's absolutely necessary, then we'll utilize the tools that we have to, and those tools that we have at our disposal. However, if it's not necessary, because our officers are responding to this quickly, and I want everybody to understand this, when we recognize that someone is going to act out violently, and we respond quickly, immediately, but not rush in, we put into the possibility of that violence growing. And then now we have to resort to the use of those types of tactics. So we can reduce that by putting an end to any types of violence or vandalism as quickly as possible.
Hi, Dave Struett, Sun-Times. You've talked about the extensive training that your officers have gone through for dealing with protests. Was there no other way last night could have ended than with 55 arrests?
No. When you have people who show up with the intent on fighting with the police, destroying things, burning flags, and I can tell you right now, I'm looking at a leadership team who tried to talk to them, tried to negotiate, tried to get them to leave, gave them a reasonable amount of time, even though this was unpermitted, to speak and then leave. They refused to do that. And at some point, we have to take action. Look, I know everyone wants to believe that we can de-escalate every single situation and we can walk away and everybody's going to be fine. There are those people who are out there right now, it's a non-starter for them. They don't want to talk, they don't want to negotiate, they don't want to cooperate. They want what they want, and that's it. And if what they want is to harm others and to destroy property, we're going to put an end to it.
Superintendent Martin Costi, PR.
How are you, Mark?
Hi, you spoke about the 3 journalists and said the problem is they were too close. Legally speaking, what's the charge that they're facing?
We'll get back to you on that. I don't have that in front of me right now, but I'll get back to you on that.
Good morning, Superintendent. Michelle Gallardo with ABC7. Question for you. So Samidun, which is one of the 3 groups that is listed as being behind last night's protest, has been designated as a terrorist organization in Israel. It's banned in Germany. The list goes on and on. And so, as such, was this the protest that you were most concerned with in terms of your planning for it? And I guess the second part of that is, in light of that, is CPD working with federal authorities to confirm people's identities and really look through their backgrounds before just processing and releasing them?
Well, we always look at that, right? Because when you're processing people, they're fingerprinted, we're looking at all of that. However, what I will say from the start, we don't just look at groups. We don't necessarily just look at affiliations. What we're looking at are actions. Because you may have people who show up here who are affiliated with particular groups who just talk. They're not here to commit acts of violence. We're looking at actions, and everything that we do and have planned around We plan for those who show up here to cause destruction, chaos, criminal activity, violence. And that's what we've trained for. So no matter who shows up here, we're going to be ready to respond to them.
Good morning, Carmen Vargas with Univision. Superintendent, what is going to happen from now on with protests that are not approved by CPD? Are they going to be allowed to carry on or not at all?
Well, listen, we'll assess those as they happen, just like we did this one, and we'll prepare for it. Look, when people are moving about the streets, walking, talking, if we don't have any reasonable suspicion to stop, question those people, they can form up. People have the right to assemble. However, we are going to control the situation. When we get there, we'll make an assessment of what's happening. And if we know we need to take action, we'll take action. But we'll make an assessment, and everything that we do in response to that will be based on a constitutional response.
Hello, Superintendent. It's Molly with the Washington Post. How are you? Two-part questions, if I can. The first is, the folks who were arrested overnight, will they be prosecuted? Because you spoke a little bit about that before the DNC, about the intent to prosecute those who get arrested. And then also, we're expecting a pretty big protest later today, and then there's another big one scheduled tomorrow, but my understanding was today's might be the biggest. Will the approach today be similar to what we saw overnight, because today's protest, the big one, is unpermitted as well by the city, or will it be different? That's my question.
Okay, so to the first question, can you go over that one more time?
Will the folks who were arrested overnight be prosecuted?
Okay, so here's what I will tell you. I have had, and before this started, I've had a conversation with State's Attorney Kim Fox, and she's actually made a public statement that people who come here to damage and destroy our city are going to be prosecuted. That's number one. Is our approach going to be the same with the group today as yesterday? Absolutely not, unless things change. Our approach yesterday initially was the same approach that we approach every group with. Obviously, we had heightened concerns about this one because of the threats that were coming out of the group initially. The group that's protesting today, we're going to treat them the same way we would treat anyone who wants to exercise their First Amendment rights. And that's how it starts. It's always going to start that way. It's going to start with respect. It's going to start with respect for people's First Amendment rights. If things change and we make an assessment that we need to do something different, we will do that. But we will respect people's rights to protest.
Hi, I'm Mills Hayes with News Nation. Hi. So we obviously saw an unruly protest last night, and we know that this is day 3 and there's more protests planned. Do you guys expect these other protests to look similar? Is this a glimpse of what we're going to see, these mass arrests over the next few days?
No, we never know what to expect. And, and I never want to put that out in the universe that we're going to make mass arrests. I've said it before, if we can get through this Democratic National Convention with no arrests or the least amount of arrests possible, that's a win. It's a success. However, again, we're going to respect people's First Amendment rights, and those who are protesting peacefully, following the law, we will give them that right and we'll protect it while they do it. But we're not going to allow people to come into this city and destroy it.
Good morning, Superintendent. Julie Bosman with the New York Times.
Okay.
Good. You said earlier today that it is time to bring Chicago back to where we want it to be. Can you say specifically what you mean by that?
Well, listen, Chicago gets a black eye, about the dangers of the city, and you have people who don't live here who believe that if you just show up here, that, you're going to suffer immediate harm. This is a beautiful city, and We need to bring back our reputation. We need everybody to see Chicago as what it is. It's one of the most beautiful cities in the entire world. I'm proud to live here. I'm proud to be a Chicagoan, and so is everyone standing here. And I'm proud to be a part of an organization right now that's defending this city against destruction and harm.
Hi, Superintendent Heather Sharon. Can you talk a little bit more about the taunts directed at female Chicago police officers? They were explicitly sexual in nature and directed at them because of their gender. Do you have a sense of how the female officers in particular responded to it? That seems somewhat unusual to me, and I want to know a little bit more in specific about what they faced last night.
Well, I tell you, listen, I was here in 2020. I was here during the NATO event, and I was on the front lines in each one of those. And women suffer those taunts on this job all the time. Just vicious nastiness. But our officers are resilient. I can't say enough about the women who work this job. Just the strength that they showed to work through that was amazing. And we have to make sure that we check on them to make sure that they're working their way through it. But I tell you, the level of resilience that they showed through this was amazing. And I can't say enough about it. And a lot of times we see these tactics because they're demonstrated tactics to also upset the male officers who want to stand up for their fellow officers. But they didn't take the bait. They didn't take the bait. But I just can't say enough about these officers and those women who dealt with that and were resilient throughout it all.
Good morning, Superintendent. Joey Kemper with the Associated Press.
How are you, Joey?
Good, thank you. Kind of change the subject, but there was a fugitive that was arrested about a half mile from the DNC at a restaurant, a fugitive from Mississippi. Do you have any more information at this point about that, how that fugitive was located? Sounds like he's in a restaurant, and how that kind of seemed like he was taken into custody this morning.
That's something I don't have a bunch of facts on right now, but we can get some information to you afterwards. Okay.
Good morning, Superintendent Megan Hickey, CBS Chicago.
How are you, Megan?
Okay, thanks. Do you have any sense of where the majority of these protesters who were arrested are from? Are these locals, or are these people coming in from out of town?
So right now we have identified 22 of them from out of town. 14 of them right now we're trying to work through because I believe they refused to give addresses. So we haven't been able to determine where they're from at this point. But right now, nearly half of them, and that's without the 14 being accounted for, are from out of town. They're not from Chicago. A lot of them are from the West Coast. That's just last night, yes.
Thanks, Superintendent, for doing this. Shimon Brokovitz from CNN. When I was out there on Monday with the protesters, like the 3,500, I wanted your observation on this. There seem to be, and perhaps it's these outside groups that are coming in and are trying to agitate the protesters. And what's happening is actually the protesters who have the permit and who live here are actually blocking them. There was a group that was trying to break through a group of officers that were on bikes. And so I just wanted to get your observations on that and what you're seeing out there. I saw some of your deputies out there, and I honestly saw you out there. But I just wanted to get your sense if that is something that you're seeing and just your take on that. And then I would like to ask the Secret Service a question as well.
So when you say block, you mean where they trying to stop the bad people within the group from getting? Yeah. Well, so here's what I will tell you. And the protest on Monday, you had a lot of great people in that protest who just simply wanted to express their First Amendment rights. Now, you will have people who will infiltrate those groups. Now, when we have those groups who self-police to some point, they have their own who are monitoring that. And in some cases, across the year, we've worked with those people to make sure that if we need to extract someone from the crowd who's doing harm so that they don't hurt the cause, we will do that. And we'll do that with any protest group. If you want to protest and you have your own people just kind of self-policing and you're cooperating with us, there's someone within that group doing things, committing acts of violence, vandalism, point them out. Step aside, we'll go in, we'll extract that person, and we will continue to move on.
And just for the Secret Service, if I may, there was a lot of concern over these email threads at the hotels, and I just want to see if there was any update on that and how things are going with that.
We in law enforcement, especially the Secret Service, have to run out every threat. I know we ran out every single threat yesterday, and I think they're continuing to come in today. But as our agency, along with the Chicago Police Department, will continue to run out all those threats.
Steve Vago from the New York Post.
How are you, Steve?
Good, how are you? I know you said you didn't know the charges against the press, but do you know the charges against the protesters or a range of charges?
Well, there are multiple charges. There are disorderly conduct charges, there are obstruction charges, there are charges of battery to police officers, and quite a few more. Now, at some point, you'll be able to get that information. I have it right here. From the Joint Information Center, they'll be releasing the information when it's finalized. So you'll be able to go in and look at all of that information. Also, we're also setting up a FOIA portal at some point, and you'll be able to get the information through there also.
Morning, Superintendent.
Morning.
Ben Neighborhood with NBC5 Chicago.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I wanted to ask because it appears as though the tone, the interactions between protesters and police has changed. And Sunday, there's a marked difference in your tone this morning. Crowd control policies inherently have a little bit of discretion. You said a couple of times you felt like officers could have potentially used more force. Can you talk about whether you believe they should have? And are there incidents in which you believe your officers should use chemicals or kettle protesters if they're being unruly in your view?
Well, first of all, let me say this. Our officers, we didn't have any major injuries of our officers yesterday. Now, in the protest Monday, we had an officer who was pushed over at a different protest from the one at the fence, and he suffered a concussion as a result of that. But minimal, minor injuries to 2 officers. Minimal, minor injuries to 2 of the arrestees. So if you ask me the question, was it necessary to use those higher levels of force at that point? No, because our officers weren't injured. Now, there are times where we know that when the risk of injury becomes greater, the risk of death to an officer is imminent, now we go to those higher uses of force. But because the officers worked together, there was a coordinated effort, and we had a number of officers where they could work in coordination with each other. They were able to take these individuals into custody without resorting to the use of weapons. Now, that's not to say that if officers are outnumbered and they have to respond to attacks, that they should not go to a higher level of force to protect themselves. So it's based on the conditions and the circumstances, and then having a leadership team out there guiding the officers, recognizing certain things, and making sure that the officers are staying within the boundaries that they are trained. I mean, it was just an excellent job by everybody involved.
Final question.
Morning, Superintendent. Chip Mitchell at WBEZ.
Great, Chip.
I was last night. I was covering a different protest it was Montrose Harbor on the north side. 120 people, interfaith, Muslims, Jews, Christians speaking. Very similar demands, calling for a cutoff of U.S. military aid to Israel, Palestinian self-determination. And I think I might have been the only reporter there. I saw a couple of cameras, but I may have been the only actual reporter. I'm just wondering, Why do you think the public is so fascinated with this relatively small group? I've met with some of them. They're mostly kids in their 20s. I'm not going to argue that whether they're just naive or idiotic. You know, I think it's up to people to make their own judgments. But why is the public so fascinated with this group of young people that are talking about skirmishing with cops?
Okay, so I think
You're a thoughtful person, that's why I'm asking.
I think you answered your own question. You said you were only reported there, right? So here, it sells. It sells. When you're expecting a clash, when you're expecting a fight, when the continuous message is that this is going to be 1968 all over again, the Chicago Police Department can't respond constitutionally. Everybody wants to see the carnage. Why should we cover the people who are talking about peace? It doesn't sell. I mean, look, let's face facts. Let's tell the truth about what's going on here. I want to capture the picture of the officer with the billy club smashing into someone's head. And I want to put that on the front page of the newspaper. And then I want to talk about how terrible the Chicago Police Department, right? People want to see the carnage. You know, we have people in this city who are doing great things, but we focus on the negativity. We focus on the violence. And we push that narrative in our own city. There comes a time where we have to recognize what we're doing. See, what I've decided with the Chicago Police Department is to look at where we've made mistakes. Look at where we've been wrong. Look at the history of this department and take corrective action so that we don't repeat those things again. Transform it. Transform this department. You're seeing that right now. But in order to get to the bottom and answer the question that you just threw out there, that we all have to look at ourselves. And we have to ask the question, why are we not covering the good things that people are doing? Why is it that we're looking for the bad things? That's what we've got to start looking at. So if we want things to get better, we've got to look at things good that are happening. But I will tell you this right now, with our teams, when you see team gatherings and people running in the street and acting wild, you know why they do that? Because they know they're going to get coverage. And there are great teenagers who are doing great things across the city. Nobody says a word about what they're doing. We have to look at ourselves. What is journalism? I'm not a journalist, so I'll let you guys answer that question. But you asked me for my observation, that's my observation. Lastly, I just like to acknowledge, I really have to acknowledge the women in leadership in this department and our female officers. Last night and times before was a reminder to me of what they have to deal with. Being a woman in public safety. I really have to give credit to Commissioner Annette Hope and the work that she's doing with the fire department, because she is an excellent, excellent partner. Deputy Commissioner Mary Sherry, with the work that she does, hardcore. Just couldn't ask for better people. Our Chief of Detectives, Antoinette City. Our Chief of the Bureau of Internal Affairs, Ryan Tyler. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the resilience, and thank you for setting an example for every woman who wants to be a part of public safety. You're setting the example, and you're trailblazers for that, so continue to keep that work up. I appreciate the work that everybody here is doing. Thank you. Thank you for the questions. And thank you for allowing me to just educate you a little bit about what the Chicago Police Department has been doing and what they do. Lastly, I see Deputy Chief Chris Papiano, who was on the ground yesterday doing a great job out there. Just want to acknowledge him. I see him out there. My Chief of Staff, did not say enough about my Chief of Staff. She's behind the scenes. Dana O'Malley just, she does a great job. So I had to, everything that I have prepared, she makes sure that it's prepared for me when I get in. She's awesome. I can't say enough about her. So thank you very much for that. Right? And that's all I have, people. Thank you very much. We will see you out there again tonight. And we'll be talking about another success story tomorrow.
Will you be out there tonight?
Absolutely.